Imagine a single palate holding the power to elevate or obliterate culinary empires. One woman's judgment could ignite a chef's star or extinguish it forever. Her subtle hand meticulously notes every nuance. Her face, obscured by shadow, holds the weight of 1,000 reputations. Meet Lena Thorne, a name whispered with reverence and dread in every Michelin-starred kitchen across the globe. She rose from humble beginnings, honing her extraordinary palate in her grandmother's bustling kitchen, transforming raw talent into an unmatched understanding of flavor. Lena became the world's most influential food critic, not through privilege, but through relentless dedication and an unyielding commitment to integrity. For her, food wasn't just sustenance or spectacle. It was art, history, and a reflection of a chef's soul. She judged on taste, technique, and truth, never on pomp or circumstance. Lena's unparalleled influence came with a crucial, strategic decision. She operated in silence, an unseen force. She believed the true measure of a restaurant wasn't how it treated VIPs, but how it served everyone, especially those it didn't recognize. So Lena often walked into establishments dressed casually, blending into the background, seeking the unvarnished truth of the dining experience. Her goal was simple: to ensure that genuine quality and heartfelt service extended to every single patron, regardless of appearance. Her next target, Éclat, a new, highly anticipated restaurant that had taken New York City's culinary scene by storm. Buzzworthy, ambitious, and already rumored to be a shoo-in for a coveted Michelin star. The pressure on Éclat's head chef was immense, the expectations sky-high. Lena, with a thoughtful gaze fixed on a glossy magazine feature of the restaurant, knew this review would make or break more than just a menu. It would define a legacy. At the heart of Éclat's glittering facade was Chef Antoine Dubois. A culinary prodigy, yes, but a maestro of arrogance. His kitchen, a pristine, bustling machine, operated under his tyrannical precision. "Faster! These scallops need perfection, not your clumsy touch," he barked, his voice slicing through the clatter. He reveled in his past successes, convinced of his untouchable genius, dismissing junior chefs with a flick of his wrist. For Antoine, his talent alone was enough to guarantee his reign. Antoine believed appearances were everything. He glided through Éclat's elegant dining room, a charming host for the city's elite, exchanging air kisses with celebrities and titans of industry. But for anyone he didn't deem desirable, those without the right clothes, the right name, or the right connections, he had only a dismissive glance. Éclat, in his eyes, was a stage for the privileged, and he, the star. What he didn't know was that the most important judgment was about to come from the very person he'd never even acknowledge. Lena Thorne stood before her full-length mirror, not with vanity, but with purpose. Her apartment, usually a canvas for elegant, discerning taste, now served as a staging ground for invisibility. She bypassed the silk blouses and tailored jackets, reaching instead for a simple charcoal knit top and well-worn dark jeans. A muted scarf, carefully chosen, completed the ensemble. This wasn't about hiding, it was about revealing. Lena, the world's most influential food critic, wasn't seeking a preferential table or a fawned-over chef. She sought the truth. And the truth, she knew, was only found when you stripped away the pomp and presented yourself as just another face in the crowd. She adjusted the scarf, a subtle, determined smile playing on her lips. Her mission: to experience Éclat not as a legend, but as an everyday woman. Miles away, in the gleaming, high-pressure kitchen of Éclat, Chef Antoine Dubois was a whirlwind of controlled chaos and barely contained fury. "This basil! It's limp, Henri, limp!" he bellowed, snatching a sprig from his trembling sous chef. Sweat beaded on Antoine's brow as he meticulously, obsessively, inspected every ingredient, every station. The air hummed with a tension thicker than Éclat's signature demi-glace. Rumors had been swirling for weeks. A major critic was in town, and Éclat was on their radar. Antoine's anxiety was a live wire, sparking at every imperfection. He barked another order, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "They say she could be anyone, anywhere. Every dish, every plate, every breath must be perfect. Do you understand, Henri? Perfect." The sous chef nodded, eyes wide. as Antoine meticulously rearranged a single microgreen on a plate that was already flawless. But there was a time, long ago, when Antoine's passion was purer. A sepia-toned memory of a bustling Parisian bistro, the clatter of pans and the rich aroma of braised beef. Young Antoine, barely 20, beamed as an elderly patron praised his simple onion soup. "Magnifique, mon petit chef," the woman had declared. But then, a week later, a renowned critic from a local paper had dined. Antoine had hovered, ignored his other guests, focused solely on the critic's table. The glowing review had been his first taste of true acclaim, and with it, a dangerous lesson. Some palates, some opinions, mattered more than others. The memory faded, replaced by the present, where Antoine's ambition had eclipsed the simple joy of feeding all. Later that afternoon, Lena Thorne moved through the city streets with a quiet grace. Her casual attire was a stark contrast to the sophisticated boutiques and towering glass buildings that lined her path. She observed the ebb and flow of city life, her senses acutely tuned, a habit born from years of discerning observation. Soon, the grand facade of Éclat emerged into view. Polished brass, dark wood, and floor-to-ceiling windows hinted at the exclusivity within. It was a palace of gastronomy, designed to impress, to intimidate. Lena paused for a moment, taking in the opulent exterior. Her simple jeans and knit top a quiet defiance against its grandeur. She took a deep, steadying breath, then pushed open the heavy glass door, stepping into the world Antoine Dubois had so meticulously crafted. The reception area of Éclat was a symphony of hushed elegance. A hostess, impeccably dressed and with an air of practiced aloofness, approached Lena. Her eyes, however, immediately dropped to Lena's casual outfit, a subtle frown creasing her brow. "Good evening," the hostess said, her tone devoid of warmth. "Do you have a reservation?" Lena replied with a polite but firm, "Yes, Thorne, for one." The hostess's gaze lingered for a moment too long before she reluctantly consulted her tablet, her fingers tapping with an almost theatrical slowness. The message was clear. "You don't belong here." Lena met her gaze impassive, already noting the slight. From the opulent main dining room, Chef Antoine Dubois surveyed his domain, a king in his castle. His eyes, ever watchful for a familiar face or a potential VIP, swept across the room. They landed, briefly, on the reception area, where the hostess was speaking to a woman in unremarkable clothing. Antoine's expression tightened. Such clientele did not fit Éclat's image. With an almost imperceptible flick of his wrist, a dismissive wave that spoke volumes, he signaled the hostess. His unspoken command was clear. "Deal with her." The hostess nodded, a swift, deferential gesture, already understanding her instruction. Lena, though seemingly focused on the menu presented to her, caught Antoine's imperious glance and the hostess's quick compliance. The game, she realized, had already begun. Lena was led not to the elegant main dining room, but to a small, cramped table, tucked away near the kitchen entrance. The constant clatter of dishes and shouted orders from the bustling kitchen formed an unwelcome soundtrack to what was supposed to be a refined dining experience. From her obscure corner, Lena observed the opulent dining room where other patrons, all impeccably dressed, were being ushered to prime tables with panoramic views and attentive smiles. She noticed the subtle but unmistakable glances from the host, the quick, dismissive gesture that had landed her here. The waiter, a young man with an air of practiced indifference, placed a single menu before her with a perfunctory flourish and vanished without a word. Lena's lips thinned almost imperceptibly. Subtle, but clear, she thought, her mind already noting the first undeniable mark against. Éclat. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Lena sat, her menu untouched, her presence seemingly invisible to the flurry of waiters who glided past her table, always attending to guests in the more desirable sections. She watched as water glasses were refilled, bread baskets offered, and appetizers swiftly delivered to tables that had arrived well after her. Each time she attempted to catch a waiter's eye, they seemed to expertly pivot, their gaze sweeping over her as if she were part of the furniture. The vibrant hum of conversation and laughter from the well-served dining room only amplified the stark silence at her own table. A sigh, almost imperceptible, escaped her, This wasn't merely slow service. This was a deliberate act of disregard, a calculated cold shoulder. Her internal clock, accustomed to the precision of fine dining, ticked with a growing sense of annoyance. The weight, the blatant oversight, wasn't just unprofessional. It was personal. Chef Antoine Dubois, ever the showman, emerged from the kitchen, his crisp white jacket a beacon of authority as he surveyed his dominion. His eyes, sharp and judgmental, swept over the dining room, lingering on the tables of his preferred clientele. The influencers, the socialites, the critics he knew by name. Then his gaze snagged on Lena, still unserved, still sitting in that undesirable corner. A flicker of irritation crossed his face, not at the poor service, but at her continued presence. He strode towards her table, his expression a mask of thinly veiled contempt. "Still here?" he drawled, his voice carrying a condescending edge. "Forgive me, madam, but this establishment caters to a discerning palate and a certain standard of patronage. Are you quite sure you haven't mistaken us for a different sort of eatery?" Lena looked up, her gaze calm and unwavering, meeting his snobbish sneer head-on. "I believe I am exactly where I intend to be, Chef Dubois," she replied, her voice low but firm, a quiet challenge in her tone. "And I am quite discerning." Antoine's sneer deepened. "Discerning? Or merely misplaced?" He glanced pointedly at her simple attire, then at the untouched menu. "Look, I manage a 2-star establishment, soon to be 3. We don't have time for window shoppers, or for those who don't appreciate the artistry we provide. The prices here, I assure you, reflect that exclusivity." He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping but still sharp enough to sting. "Perhaps a more accessible establishment down the street would better suit your preferences. This isn't the kind of place you can just walk into and expect to be understood." With a dismissive wave of his hand, he made his intention clear. "I think it's best if you leave. We wouldn't want to waste your time, or ours." The words hung in the air, a public humiliation delivered with casual cruelty. Lena felt a familiar burning heat rise within her, a mix of anger and the deep, frustrating ache of being judged not for her character or her expertise, but for the skin she was in and the clothes she wore. This wasn't just about a meal. It was about blatant disrespect, about being told she didn't belong in a space she had every right to occupy. Lena rose slowly, her movements deliberate, her eyes never leaving Antoine's. She didn't argue, didn't plead. She simply turned and walked out, the hushed whispers of the other patrons following her like a tangible weight. Once outside, she took a deep, steadying breath of the cool night air, the opulent facade of Éclat, now looming behind her like a monument to arrogance. The initial sting of humiliation quickly morphed into a cold, hard resolve. She had faced prejudice before, navigated countless rooms where her presence was questioned or diminished. But this blatant, unprovoked dismissal, in a place that prided itself on culinary excellence, was an insult that cut deeper. It wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had ever been judged for their appearance, their background, or the color of their skin. Her usual calm demeanor, a shield honed over years of navigating a demanding industry, gave way to an internal fire. This wasn't a slight to be endured. This was an injustice to be addressed. Slowly, with a newfound steel in her gaze, Lena reached into her purse. Her fingers closed around her phone, a sleek, unassuming device that held the power to reshape the culinary landscape. She moved to a quiet alcove, just out of sight of Éclat's main entrance, the restaurant's glittering sign still mocking her from a distance. With a calm that belied the storm brewing within her, Lena dialed. The number connected almost instantly. "Eleanor," she stated, her voice clear and authoritative. "It's Lena. I'm calling from outside Éclat, and our plans have changed." There was a beat of silence on the other end, a seasoned publicist anticipating the shift. "What did they do?" Eleanor's voice was sharp, knowing. "They dismissed me. Publicly. And with prejudice," Lena replied, her tone devoid of emotion, a strategist laying out a battle plan. "It's time. I want the full report on Éclat, every health code violation, every staff complaint, every questionable sourcing detail. And I want a press statement drafted. We're going public, immediately. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The silent critic was silent no more. Back inside Éclat, Antoine was practically preening. He had just returned from charming a table of influential food bloggers, feeling utterly vindicated in his decision to eject the undesirable woman. Some people just don't understand true quality, he muttered to his sous chef, who nodded nervously, knowing better than to contradict the volatile chef. They expect a 5-star experience with a 2-star budget. He chuckled, a smug, self-satisfied sound. Suddenly, a young waiter rushed up to the sous chef, his face pale. "Chef! There's a very urgent call for the hostess, from some very insistent people." And a sleek black car just pulled up outside, not our usual clientele, but very imposing. Antoine merely waved a dismissive hand. Another reservation mix-up, no doubt. Or more common folk trying to get a table. Send them away. Tonight, we focus on perfection, not distractions. He remained blissfully unaware that the storm he had so casually dismissed was now gathering at his doorstep. Moments later, a sleek black luxury sedan, its windows tinted to an impenetrable obsidian, glided to a silent stop directly in front of Éclat's grand entrance. It was the kind of vehicle that announced importance without needing a flashy logo. The rear door opened, and out stepped Eleanor, Lena's publicist, followed by Marcus, her editor. Both were impeccably dressed. Eleanor in a sharp, tailored suit, Marcus in a perfectly fitted blazer. Their expressions were serious, professional, and utterly determined. They spotted Lena waiting calmly by the alcove. "Ms. Thorne," Eleanor said, her voice respectful yet urgent. "We came as soon as we received your call." Marcus nodded, a thick leather-bound notebook already in his hand. "Everything is in motion, Lena. We're ready." Lena met their gaze, a subtle, almost imperceptible nod, her only reply. Her team, her allies, were here. The quiet power she wielded was now becoming visible, preparing to unleash its full force upon Éclat. Eleanor and Marcus moved with purpose, striding past the velvet rope and directly into Éclat's reception area. The hostess, who had been so dismissive of Lena earlier, initially stepped forward, an air of haughty indignation on her face. "Excuse me, do you have a reservation? This is Éclat, not a public thoroughfare." But as Eleanor turned, her eyes met the hostess's, and a flicker of recognition, then dawning dread, spread across the hostess's features. Eleanor, a prominent figure in the city's media and PR circles, was not easily forgotten. The hostess's confident posture crumbled. Ms. Vance, I didn't realize." Eleanor offered no pleasantries. Her gaze was unwavering. "We are here to see Chef Dubois. Now." Whispers began to ripple through the front-of-house staff. The hostess, stammering, could only gesture weakly towards the dining room, her face paling as she realized the gravity of the esteemed visitors. The atmosphere in the opulent reception area had abruptly shifted from exclusive calm to palpable tension. Inside the main dining room, Chef Antoine was basking in the glow of a conversation with a renowned actress, charming her with tales of his latest culinary innovations. It was a perfect moment of self-aggrandizement. Then, Eleanor and Marcus, followed closely by Lena, cut a path directly towards him. Antoine, momentarily annoyed by the interruption, looked up, a condescending smile still on his face. "Can I help you?" he began, his tone imperious. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice cutting through the elegant chatter of the dining room like a perfectly sharpened knife. "Chef Dubois," she announced, her voice clear and carrying. "I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Lena Thorne." Antoine's eyes flicked to Lena, standing silently behind her team, dressed in the same common clothes he had so scornfully dismissed. "Yes, I believe we've met," he said, a flicker of irritation, then confusion crossing his face. But Eleanor wasn't finished. "Not just met, chef. This is the Lena Thorne, the world-renowned culinary critic." the architect of taste. And tonight, she was your anonymous diner. The air in the dining room solidified. A spoon clattered to a plate. Patrons gasped. Antoine's jaw dropped, his face draining of all color as the realization hit him like a physical blow. Lena offered him a calm, knowing smile, a smile that promised a reckoning. Antoine's elegant composure shattered. His eyes darted from Eleanor to Marcus, then wildly to Lena, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. "Miss Thorne! You are Lena Thorne?" His voice was a pathetic stutter, a stark contrast to his earlier arrogance. No, this is a misunderstanding, a terrible mistake. I didn't know it was you. I would never... He reached out a trembling hand, trying to grasp at an explanation, a retraction, anything to undo the catastrophic error. But Lena stood firm, her posture unyielding. "You know exactly what you were doing, Chef Dubois," she interjected, her voice quiet but carrying immense weight. "You judged me. You dismissed me. Not because of my reservation or my lack of one, but because of how I looked. Because you decided I didn't belong in your establishment." Her gaze was unwavering, allowing him no escape, no room for his desperate, unconvincing excuses. His words died in his throat, replaced by the chilling silence of the dining room. Lena stepped forward, her presence commanding the absolute attention of every stunned patron and terrified staff member. "My reviews, Chef Dubois," she began, her voice resonating with a quiet authority, "are not simply about the quality of the foie gras or the precision of the plating. They are about the experience. They are about the spirit of hospitality, the welcome, the respect extended to every single person who walks through your doors." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Tonight, my experience at Éclat was one of blatant prejudice, of unearned arrogance, and of a fundamental failure to understand what true fine dining truly means." Her gaze, sharp and incisive, bored into Antoine's panicked eyes. "You failed that test, chef. You failed it spectacularly. And my review will reflect precisely that. Because true culinary artistry demands respect for all, not just for the elite you deign worthy of your attention." The verdict was delivered, sharp and final, leaving no room for appeal. The moment Lena, Eleanor, and Marcus stepped back into Lena's bustling, impeccably organized office, the machinery of public relations whirred into action. Eleanor was already on a call, her voice clipped and professional, dictating the key points of the incident to a wire service. Marcus, hunched over his laptop, rapidly drafted an official statement for Lena's website and social media channels, incorporating Lena's precise observations and her condemnation of the restaurant's discriminatory practices. Lena, meanwhile, reviewed an advance copy of the scathing article Marcus had already prepared, nodding in approval. In the digital age, news traveled at the speed of light, and the story of the world's most feared food critic being thrown out of a prestigious restaurant due to prejudice was precisely the kind of narrative that would explode across platforms. The quiet hum of the office was the sound of an empire striking back, with surgical precision and devastating efficiency. Back at Éclat, the dining room had emptied with shocking speed, leaving Antoine alone amidst the wreckage of his arrogance. He stumbled into his office, his hands shaking as he frantically dialed Lena's publicly listed contact number, then Eleanor's, then Marcus's. Each call went straight to voicemail. "Please, Miss Thorne, please," he pleaded into the phone, his voice cracking with desperation. "It was a mistake. I beg you, reconsider. This will ruin me." He slammed the phone down, his eyes wide with terror as he stared at his computer screen. The first social media posts were already appearing, screenshots of Eleanor's press statement, tweets from outraged patrons who had witnessed the scene, whispers turning into a roar. #Éclat shame. One hashtag blazed. #no respect no stars. Another. Antoine watched in horror as his once pristine reputation began to crumble in real time, the digital firestorm engulfing everything he had built. His frantic pleas were unheard, his desperate attempts to reverse his fate utterly futile. The news traveled like wildfire, a digital inferno consuming Chef Antoine Dubois' once pristine reputation. Within hours of Lena Thorne's team initiating their carefully coordinated release, The story of the esteemed food critic's humiliating dismissal from Éclat exploded across every online platform. Headlines screamed, "Michelin aspirant chef throws out world-renowned critic for not fitting in," and "Éclat's arrogant chef exposed, prejudice in fine dining." Tweets and comments poured in, a torrent of outrage and condemnation. Users shared Lena's official review, which, while impeccably professional, laid bare Éclat's abysmal service and Antoine's blatant disrespect. The public, always eager for justice, especially against perceived elitism, rallied behind Lena. A graph displaying trending topics showed #Éclat shame and #respect the plate dominating discussions, proving that in the digital age, a reputation built on years of careful crafting could be shattered in a single, prejudiced moment. The very next evening, the opulent dining room of Éclat, usually a symphony of hushed chatter and clinking crystal, was eerily quiet. Wide shots revealed rows of pristine, empty tables, draped in their finest linens, awaiting guests who would never arrive. Only a handful of hesitant patrons, perhaps unaware or simply curious, dotted the vast space, their voices hushed, their eyes darting around at the desolate scene. The restaurant staff, usually bustling with efficient grace, moved with heavy, dejected steps. The sharp, incessant ring of the reservation line no longer signaled new bookings, but a steady stream of cancellations. Each unanswered phone call, each empty chair, was a silent testament to the devastating impact of Lena Thorne's review. From the kitchen doorway, Chef Antoine Dubois watched, his face a mask of disbelief as his bustling empire crumbled into a hollow echo. Late that night, in his once sacred office, Antoine Dubois was a man undone. His pristine chef's coat lay discarded on the floor, his usually immaculate hair disheveled. He reread Lena's review for the 10th time, his eyes scanning the precise, damning words that dissected not just his food, but the very soul of his establishment. Éclat, Lena had written, offers a facade of perfection, but its true flavor is one of cold disdain, served with a side of blatant prejudice. He slammed the tablet onto his desk, the sound echoing in the silent room. A crystal wine glass, a gift from a former mentor, became a target, shattering against the wall in a burst of frustrated rage. Was this regret? Or merely fury at being exposed? He paced, muttering to himself, a pathetic shadow of the arrogant maestro. His career, the empire he had so meticulously built, now hung by a thread, unraveling before his very eyes. The culinary world, a notoriously tight-knit community, moved with swift, unforgiving precision. Reputation, after all, was everything. One by one, the pillars of Éclat's success began to crumble. In a sleek, minimalist office, a food supplier's executive signed documents, canceling lucrative contracts. The Michelin Guide, ever the arbiter of culinary excellence, announced a thorough review of Éclat's coveted stars, a death knell in the industry. Members of prestigious culinary awards committees, their faces stern and unyielding, rescinded Antoine's nominations, citing a profound misalignment with the values of hospitality and respect. The narrator explained that in fine dining, where artistry and service converged, an ethical breach was an unpardonable sin. Antoine had not just insulted a critic, he had violated the very unspoken code of the craft. The once grand restaurant, Éclat, stood as a stark monument to arrogance and poor judgment. Within a few short months, the gleaming glass doors were boarded up, plastered with peeling for-lease signs. The elaborate flower arrangements that once graced its entrance were long gone, replaced by a single, withered plant in a cracked pot, choked by weeds. The interior, visible through a small gap in the boarding, was dark, devoid of life, a hollow shell of its former glory. The narrator summarized the swift, brutal financial and reputational collapse that led to its demise. Without patrons, without suppliers, without industry support, Éclat had simply ceased to exist. It was a conclusive end to a dream built on a foundation of sand. A year later, Chef Antoine Dubois was a ghost of his former self. His once sharp chef's whites were replaced by a stained, ill-fitting apron. His hands, once accustomed to delicate garnishes, now mechanically chopped onions in a small, greasy diner kitchen. The vibrant energy that had once defined him was replaced by a sullen, haggard demeanor. He moved silently, his eyes perpetually downcast, avoiding the gaze of the diner's boisterous owner, who barked orders without an ounce of his former respect. "Antoine, you got those fries ready? Table 3 is waiting." The new boss's curt tone was a stark contrast to the deferential whispers Antoine once commanded. The narrator reflected on his fall. The maestro of Éclat, now just a line cook, his brilliance dimmed, his pride utterly shattered. He had lost everything, and the world had moved on. Meanwhile, in her bustling, vibrant office, a year later, Lena Thorne's influence was not only undiminished but amplified. The Éclat incident had only solidified her reputation for integrity and fairness, proving that her discerning palate was matched only by her unwavering moral compass. She sat, calm and composed, reviewing new restaurant proposals, her team, Eleanor and Marcus, discussing new projects with an almost reverent enthusiasm. Eleanor gestured to a stack of fan mail. "Your platform has never been stronger, Lena. Everyone wants to know what you'll champion next." Lena smiled, a quiet, knowing expression. The incident had given her a new, even more powerful voice, a voice that resonated far beyond the plate. A new book, bearing her name prominently, sat on her desk, a testament to her enduring legacy. Lena Thorne, still committed to her undercover approach, found herself at a new kind of restaurant. This place, a cozy bistro with a vibrant, community-focused menu, embodied the values of respect and inclusivity she championed. Dressed casually, she blended in with the diverse clientele, feeling genuinely welcomed from the moment she walked through the door. The food was honest, soulful, and delicious. As the owner chef, a warm, smiling woman, stopped by her table, Lena exchanged a genuine smile. There was no pretense, no judgment, just a shared appreciation for good food and good company. Lena took notes with a contented expression, the restaurant's inviting ambiance a stark contrast to Éclat's cold grandeur. Her internal satisfaction was palpable. This was what true hospitality felt like. Later that evening, in the quiet solitude of her office, Lena Thorne gazed at a framed article detailing Éclat's spectacular downfall. Her expression was thoughtful, wise. The narrator summarized the enduring lesson. Prejudice has a cost, and sometimes, as Antoine Dubois learned, that cost is everything. True culinary art, Lena knew, demanded not just technical skill, but a profound respect for every patron, every ingredient, every hand that touched the food. It wasn't about the price on the menu or the clothes on one's back. It was about the universal dignity of the human experience. Lena's internal thoughts echoed. Her work was more than just rating food. It was about upholding standards of humanity. She had stood for something important, and the consequences had been undeniable. The ripple effect of Lena's stand extended far beyond the culinary elite. In a bustling food market, people from different backgrounds moved freely, treated with equal warmth and respect by vendors and fellow shoppers. A young black woman, dressed in simple work clothes, was served with the same cheerful deference as a well-heeled tourist. The Éclat incident had become a cautionary tale, whispered in kitchens and recounted in hospitality schools, a stark reminder that in the service industry, respect was not just good manners, but good business. The narrator highlighted how Lena's actions had contributed to a broader, more inclusive shift in community values. The story of Lena Thorne and Éclat even found its way into the curriculum of a prestigious culinary school. In a modern classroom, a diverse group of young, aspiring chefs sat engaged, taking notes as their instructor used the Éclat case study to teach a lesson not just in cooking but in ethics and hospitality. On a projector, images flashed. Éclat's former glory, then its boarded-up facade. Antoine Dubois possessed immense talent, the instructor explained, but he lacked humility and respect. Remember this, chefs. The heart of hospitality is treating everyone with dignity, regardless of appearance. That is a lesson far more important than any recipe. The students nodded, learning from Antoine's mistakes, ensuring his legacy became a warning, not an aspiration. Back in her office, Lena Thorne continued her meticulous work. Her pen moved gracefully across the page as she drafted a new review, her focus intense, her judgment now more respected than ever before. The narrator emphasized that Lena's reviews now carried an unprecedented weight, not just for the food itself, but for the integrity and soul of the establishment. Her words had the power to elevate or condemn, not based on fleeting trends or superficial appearances, but on the enduring principles of true value and universal respect. Lena's serious but satisfied expression spoke volumes. She knew her purpose, and she wielded her influence with unwavering conviction. Lena Thorne, now a compelling voice for change, used her amplified platform to advocate for broader social justice and respect, extending her message far beyond the plate. At a public speaking event, she captivated an audience, her words displayed as text on a large screen. True excellence is not exclusive. It embraces all. She spoke passionately about the importance of seeing beyond appearances, of dismantling the biases that permeate society, and of treating everyone with dignity. She connected her personal experience at Éclat to wider issues of discrimination, inspiring countless others to challenge prejudice wherever they found it. Lena wasn't just a food critic. She was a champion for a more equitable world. A montage of short vignettes painted a picture of a positive ripple effect throughout the service industry. In a bustling cafe, a barista served an older woman in simple clothes with the same cheerful attention she gave a business executive. In a chic boutique, diverse patrons browsed, all met with genuine smiles and helpful advice. The narrator highlighted how Lena's story had contributed to a broader cultural shift, reinforcing the idea that good customer service meant news-inclusive customer service. The smiles, the easy interactions, the sense of positive change, it all demonstrated that one act of justice could inspire widespread, meaningful transformation. In the quiet sanctuary of her home, Lena Thorne savored a simple, home-cooked meal. The aromas of fresh herbs and simmering broth filled the air, a stark contrast to the high-stakes, opulent world she navigated professionally. She sat at her dining table, a gentle smile playing on her lips, reflecting on her journey and the profound impact she had made. She appeared content, at peace, knowing she had stood for something vital, that her voice had created ripples of change. This quiet moment underscored the true meaning of success and impact, not in accolades or grand gestures, but in the quiet satisfaction of upholding one's principles. A fleeting shot returned to Antoine's current workplace. He stood, tired and defeated, serving a mundane dish to an indifferent customer. The narrator's voice concluded, "Some lessons are learned the hard way, and some scars, unseen but deeply etched, remain forever. So remember, never judge a book by its cover, because the person you look down on today might just be the one holding the pen that writes your fate tomorrow." True value isn't found in a designer label or a polished exterior. It's found in integrity, in humility, and in the unwavering belief that respect is something you show to everyone, not just the people you deem worthy. Prejudice has a cost, and sometimes that cost is everything. If you're enjoying this video, then hit that like button and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this video goes. And make sure to subscribe for more stories where justice comes full circle. Channel logo and social media handles appear. Outro music begins to fade out.